Hey guys, and welcome to the Searching for Ghosts YouTube channel. This is the revisited series where we're going to take a look back at season 1, The Disappearance of Cayce Lynn McDaniel. This is episode 2, Valorie. There's a lot to unpack in this. I remember this being a strategy of mine to, even though I didn't have a lot in the beginning to go on, I thought if I could pack them in there, I could keep people listening. If I could pack enough information in there, and I was kind of throwing things against the wall to see what would stick, I thought that would smoke out more people with more information. So it was a gamble instead of stretching out, mini episodes with one topic, say. I combined a bunch. And a part of that is I value people's time. I know I don't want to sit there and listen to 17 minutes of someone drone on about the same thing, right? But that was a strategic thing on my part back then, and I think it was the right thing to do. But I just went through this episode, and I'm like, oh, wow, there's like a ton of stuff in here. So, Dawn and KJo, we introduced them. Valorie, the search dog. This is episode 2, Valorie. The sketch that I'm sure you've seen, it's still floating around the internet, in the Trenton Fairgrounds. And the phone call from the church, which still to me is probably the most important or most intriguing part of this episode for me. I thought it was going to be the dog, or that it might be, I don't know. But anyway, let's take a listen.
A couple of days after episode 1 came out, I received a message from a woman named Dawn who wanted to meet with me. She said she knew Cayce and the family and was very involved in the search efforts when Cayce went missing. She also wanted Kathy, a longtime friend of the family, to join us to help fill in any blanks. Dawn told me to carve out 2 days for interviews because there was just so much information. We didn't need 2 days, but we did talk for over 6 hours.
Hey, Dawn? Good, how are you?
There would not be a season 1 had it not been for Dawn and KJo. That was a 6-hour, and I say in the podcast, Dawn told me to carve out 2 days, but I got there and she had a notebook and they just had everything. Of course, this is 21 years later, but they both knew Cayce. Dawn used to take Cayce to school, Kathy has been friends with Cindy, I think, since childhood. But KJo has a memory like an elephant, okay? And so they had this notebook with all, and it was great because it was some of the stuff I'd read on topics, but it was every theory that had been floated or looked into for 20 years. There was Mark Burns. There was Pete Hill. There were a bunch of others. Just anything they could think of, and then their personal experiences. And I couldn't have done it without them. That was just integral to the podcast, and that's what I was looking for. That's what I was hoping for, is to get someone like that. And then you can just start picking apart everything. They weren't saying they knew. We sat there and discussed every theory and spitballed it back and forth, and I would ask questions, hey, what does that mean? What about this? What about that? And, that's what I thought I was going to get at the beginning, honestly, from Cayce's mother, just some insight, I was going into this thing blind.
Cayce was at an age when a lot of kids start to rebel. It happens. For many, it's a rite of passage. Everything that has been made public about Cayce from friends and family over the years might lead one to believe that she was immune to any teenage rebellion. As far as I'm concerned, there are 3 possible explanations for this. Number 1, people might be concerned about soiling her reputation, which might affect people's opinion of her and their interest in the case. Don't think for one moment that the image of the innocent beauty queen that was JonBenet Ramsey didn't fuel the public's fascination with that case. Number 2, Cayce showed a certain side of herself around some, and then totally a different side to others. That's what teenagers are best at. Number 3, she wasn't going through a rebellious stage. It has happened. My parents were my best friends throughout my teenage years. I never really went through that phase. I was either fishing, playing basketball, or holed up in my room with a guitar in my hands. I was pretty much a straight arrow. But the summer Cayce disappeared, both Dawn and Kathy noticed a drastic change in her appearance.
That's when I saw the change in Cayce's appearance during the summer before high school.
And I saw it too. I belong to Church of Christ, and Cayce was raised Church of Christ. Mm-hmm. And she come into church, got that like. And all I could do was, because I'd never even seen her in eyeshadow, you know.
Right.
And I'm like, well, Cayce, I like your outfit. You know, I didn't know what to say. Yeah. You know, it freaked me out so bad.
Yeah. She went from really innocent looking to the last time I saw her, she was.
That's the last time I saw her, too, was at church in the gothic outfit. That really freaked me out. Because I got her on here on her birthday. You can kind of see how she was. She was younger. Right. But still, she was still that little girl, right. You know. Something went on.
And while in 2017 the goth look seems pretty tame, in 1996 in rural West Tennessee, this was a pretty big deal. If nothing else, it was a definite departure from the Cayce of just a few months before.
Okay, so the teenage rebellion thing, man, we caught hell for this one. And there's something that KJo says. I asked her, did she want me to pull it? Or I offered to pull it from the episode, but it's still in there. I'm not going to replay it here. I know KJo well enough, and KJo is what, if you hear me say, that's what I call her. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. She was trying to express the drastic change. Cayce was a teenager, okay? And you have to understand that with so little being put out on the internet about it, and everything is just this milk and cookies, and, you know, it was a church retreat and this and that. And so with that being the background, and then along with the house story, that set a narrative to where, okay, it has to be some stranger or some just boogeyman that went into that house and got Cayce and abducted her, because this sweet little church-going girl was just sitting at home, you know, knitting. I mean, you know, that's kind of the perception they gave. But Cayce, you know, had boyfriends. Cayce was, you know, and some of these people were in a rough crowd. If you're looking at this objectively and you know that that's the case, then you have to be open to other options of, well, okay, well, if she was running with a rough, I mean, what do they do when they they always look at the significant other first, right? They always do that. The spouse or whatever, you know, you look at all angles. And let's not forget, the cops caught a lot of heat because for so long they treated this as a runaway. Okay. Well, I mean, think about it. Who runs away from home? Either troubled kids or not troubled kids running away from troubled homes, right? So this very tunnel vision narrative of church party, milk and cookies, and, they came and got her from the house. But when you realize, okay, well, this guy was interested in her, or she was seeing this guy, and this guy here, he's got a history, not of that kind of stuff, but I mean, you just have to look at that stuff. And that was what I was trying to do. And that's what Dawn and KJo were expressing in this clip, right? Because I mean, if you're thinking she's a runaway, I mean, that's the next logical step, that it wasn't just some guy who just happened to, this house was, it sits right on 45 on the Bradford Highway, or going out of Milan to Bradford. And I'm pretty sure back then that was still 2-lane. It's divided 4-lane now, so it's a lot closer to the road. But even with it being 2-lane, it's not. I mean, it's kind of remote. You're going out of town, but it's pretty close to the road on a major highway, right? So I don't know. I just always felt that someone just randomly picking that house to go in there and get her seemed a little far-fetched, right? But we caught a lot of hell because it was, you're selling the image of this girl, blah blah blah, and my point was, yeah, no, I'm not trying to, but I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything either, And if she was dating or ran around with some ne'er-do-wells, you've got to look at that. I mean, I got backed into a corner once over this, and I was like, well, no wonder it hasn't been solved in 20 years. If this is how everybody's looking at it, that it had to be some stranger danger, random guy going down 45 highway that just ran into the house and decided, hey, I think I'm going to kidnap a girl. That just doesn't make sense, man. I'm not an investigator, but, common sense, and BS, just, I don't know. So we had to go there, and man, we caught heat for it. And KJo caught heat for it. She caught heat for it from Cindy, and she's apologized. But they were just trying to set the stage for Cayce was going into her teenage years. We've all been there. Some of us rebel more than others. Some of us are wilder than others. It happens. It's not like she was 6 years old, abducted from the house. You know what I mean? It's not Marlena Childress's story. So you have to look at it. And boy, people didn't want to look at it. They still don't want to look at it.
It's been about 2 months since I stopped by the Milan Police Department to ask for any reports about Cayce that are open to the public. I was told that the initial report should be available for me to read. I've had friends and family of Cayce ask for those reports as well, but it appears that we're being stonewalled. And the daily paper out of Jackson, Tennessee, the Jackson Sun, is going through their archives to find articles about the case, but this will take some time. So the Milan Mirror Exchange has been my main source at this point to try to piece this thing together. It is a weekly paper, so I have to do a little estimating on the exact timing of certain findings. While looking through these reports, it appears that by September 2nd, 1996, police had a sketch of a possible suspect. After a little digging around, I discovered that the sketch came from a witness who alleges that Cayce was seen with this man at the Gibson County Fairgrounds in Trenton, Tennessee, a town about 14 miles away from Milan. The sketch is still floating around the internet, but like so many things about this case, it was never mentioned again. So I started asking around, and the word is that the source was deemed not credible. Not one person that I've talked to said that they believe that she was ever at the fair at Trenton. And given that all the descriptions of Cayce by law enforcement had her in her bedclothes with no shoes, I felt that it wouldn't make sense for her to be walking around at the fair a couple of days later. So I made note of this, but pretty much dismissed the sketch myself.
Okay, the sketch. In the sighting, supposedly at the Trenton Fairgrounds, that, when I was going through all the Milan Mirror articles, because, you know, back then I didn't have newspapers.com, and I don't know if I had gotten the Jackson Sun stuff yet or not, because it took them a minute to compile all that. But I had the Mile and Mirror stuff from the Get, and that sketch was in there, you know, of this dude. And so, you know, started looking into that. And then I think I found where it said that, the police had dropped that because it had been, it was erroneous information, you know. Of course, you know, you kind of start doing the math and trying to figure out, okay, how would she have gotten to Trenton? You know, and this was like, supposedly the sighting was a couple of days later. She was walking around the fairgrounds, you know, and that doesn't make sense, really. I mean, it may be 30 minutes from Trenton to Milan, but I mean, you know, these are both small towns. I used to deliver in both those towns, and, you know, if there were APBs out, or, you know, bolos out for Cayce McDaniel, I just don't see her walking around the fairgrounds in Trenton 30, you know what I mean? It's not like she was in Michigan, you know. I don't think she could move about freely, openly, without someone spotting her that had teeth to it, you know.
Then I found an article just 1 month later in the October 1st edition of the Mirror Exchange about a world-famous search and rescue dog named Valorie, who came to Milan to search for Cayce. The headline read something like, "Cayce left on her own free will, Smart Dog says." Her own free will? Again, why would Cayce leave on her own free will in boxers, a t-shirt, and no shoes? The no shoes story is one of the few things in this case that keeps being repeated year after year. I needed to know more about this smart dog and her findings, and it just so happened that I was sitting at the kitchen table with one of the people responsible for bringing Valorie to town. Dawn and her husband had even videotaped the search.
I'm going to tell you about the search and rescue dog because I could not find that tape.
Okay.
I saw this guy on TV 2 or 3 times after that at like Oklahoma bombing, one in the Philippines. I mean, when we brought him in, this dog, he rode on the plane. He had a badge, vest. We had to put him in a hotel without any cigarette smoke, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
By bit, we started with Cayce's at her house. He used the handler. He used Cindy's hairbrush and Cayce's clothes that were on the bed for a scent. The dog hit on their car in the trunk.
Wait. On Cindy's
Cindy
car?
and Steve's car, yeah. But he did tell Charles it was a different type of hit because they show emotions and stuff.
Right.
Not a death hit.
Right.
And then Steve had said that he had a deer that he'd killed, and which was probably true.
Yeah.
Knowing Steve, that's what he did. He liked to hunt and provide that way. After then, from their house, the dog right when we were there, it went to the creek behind the house, but lost a scent right there at the Hamptons. Right.
I don't know.
That's about three
I just know what
houses
you
down.
told me because I wasn't there.
Okay. Behind the house that had there was a little road that led to power lines, and that's where the dog lost the scent, right there. Then we took the dog to town, to Milan, and he got a small hit, he thought, on a payphone at the little Texaco station there.
I didn't know that.
Mm-mm.
I just knew about the dog at the house.
Then we went on to the fairgrounds in Trenton.
So, had the composite come out, and this was at the fairground supposedly, where the sighting of where he did the composite?
Yeah.
Is that what led you to bring them to take the dog
to
over
the
there?
fairgrounds.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And this was after she was missing.
Yeah.
But at the fairgrounds, the dog did get a strong hit. And the guy said she had to have been there, the way the dog acted. And the fair started after she had disappeared, so that's strange. We were really shocked at the fairgrounds because we did not feel like that was going to be a place it was going to hit, but it hit. It was odd that he said he saw Cayce at the fairgrounds, gave a composite, and the dog hit the fairgrounds. Oh. After that, pretty much, the handler guy, he went other places alone, but am unaware of any hits. I know they were going out to the dump to where the incineration was.
That was the psychic lady that I got on tape that said that about the dump.
Well, I don't think they ever felt like the dog hit anything out there. I never heard any more about it.
I didn't know the dog went out there.
Yeah.
So I desperately wanted to read the official report of Valerie's findings. That would definitely be something that would have been given to law enforcement at the time, seeing how there was at least one report in the media about it. But I wasn't going to get it from the Milan Police Department. I finally received word from Milan PD that they were not going to release any reports whatsoever pertaining to the Cayce McDaniel case. Damn. So I decided to look up Valerie's handler at the time, Harry Oakes. Valerie has passed on, but Oakes is still doing search and rescue with his organization International Canine Search and Rescue Services. In 1996, Oakes and Valerie were brought to Milan by Dawn and others with private funds. So I hoped that Oakes would be able to help me, seeing as how this mission was not sanctioned by local law enforcement.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, about 5 or 6 years after that case, of course we've been doing a lot of cases since then, somehow we got some kind of a major virus, and that's before we even thought about backing up files, and everything got destroyed, everything.
Right.
And luckily we had one USB, or not a USB, a DVD or CD or something like that at that time that had backed up the caseloads, and some of the major homicide cases that we worked, but other than that, everything else was destroyed.
Right.
And so we had to start, so the police, I know that with each search, I do a report, and I send one to the Missing Children's Office in Portland, and one to I know that there was a gentleman out of Murfreesboro who has since died that was running the Missing Children Foundation there, and he got a copy, and I know that the police department got a copy, but other than that, that's the only thing I know of the documentation.
Valerie, the dog, the search and rescue dog. That dog was like world renowned. Harry Oakes, who's got a track record, was in contact with him a little bit, quite a bit actually, making this podcast. I just don't know if it's an exact science. He's constantly having to defend what he does to people. People don't get the results they want. They're always saying he's the equivalent of a quack or whatever. I've seen him. He's always, in other cases, he's always having to defend. The dogs don't lie. They're highly trained. Blah blah blah. I don't know what to think about the dog. Without police reports, without the actual blow by blow of what Valerie found, we can only go by Dawn's recollection, because they had Dawn and her husband had shot video, kind of documenting it, right? Everywhere they went, and she thought she had it, and that's why she mentions that in the episode. She's like, I thought I couldn't find it, I was like, oh man, because I didn't have any reports, so she had to go from memory. I trust Dawn and KJo implicitly. I do. My BS meter's pretty good, and they have no reason to lie. It's just a matter of being able to recall stuff from 20 years ago, right? I don't. The dog in the trunk of the car stopped me in my tracks, but then she said it wasn't a death hit. I tried to track down that car, and like I said, without any police help, I got all these stories about, they didn't own a car at the time. He was borrowing a car, and I think I got it down to maybe make in color, you know. But I'm not a PI, man. I don't, I didn't have the resources. I don't have the resources now, but, and I don't know if you track that thing down, what it would tell you if it wasn't a death hit. I mean, and certainly if it wasn't a death hit, nothing's going to, how many people have been in that car since then, wouldn't do any good, I guess, to track it down. The Trenton Fairgrounds thing, though, blows my mind. I don't know. That just doesn't make sense. And again, when you don't know all the details, I just read and was told that the police didn't look at that Trenton story as credible. They printed that in the media. That's not a thing. That sketch is not that wasn't real. But the way Dawn told it, that dog wore it out over at Trenton Fairgrounds, so it's like, Valorie left me scratching my head. I ran in a big circle trying to figure that one out, and then ended up back where I started, which is, man, I don't know,
When Dawn first reached out to me, she told me a story that I'd never heard before, and to be honest, it blew my hair back. And this story, in my mind, might piece together the things we've discussed in this episode. There are rumors that Cayce made a phone call from the church rec center payphone the night she went missing. Who would she have called? Her mother didn't have a working phone at the house. The grandmother reportedly never received a phone call, and her best friend was at the church social with Cayce. Did Cayce call someone to arrange for them to pick her up after the church party? Was Cayce going through the teenage rebellion stage that so many have denied? Did the police investigate this alleged phone call? Is there any way to get the phone records today from a payphone in 1996?
It was a payphone at that church, and I know she used it.
It was a church phone, wasn't it?
No, it was a payphone. And Cindy and Cayce.
It was a payphone at the church.
In that little they wasn't in the church, I was in that little multiplicity building or whatever it is.
Okay.
Multipurpose building.
I got you.
But there was supposed to be a payphone in there.
Yeah, and I don't know why no one ever...
Whoever she called at that church, if she left, is who she left with. And she didn't wear her brand new tennis shoes that she was so proud of.
Right.
And she wouldn't have went nowhere because she was tenderfooted. She couldn't have left without her new tennis shoes. There's no way. Well, where were the black clothes that we seen her in? Because they wasn't at the house.
Okay, this episode, was supposed to be about the dog, the search and rescue dog. But to me, at least for my money, the phone call from the church was everything. I couldn't shake that one for the duration of doing this podcast. That right there, KJo's right. Whoever she called, we learned in this episode that that Cindy they didn't have a working phone at the house, and a lot of people, going back to the first episode, a lot of people used that to say, well, that's why it took her so long to call authorities. She didn't have a working phone, but she did call Amber that morning. And it still does not, if you remember, they drove around looking for her because the impression Amber got was that Cindy thought she had stayed at first Amber's house, and then they went to maybe see she was at her cousin's house, and they did all this driving. And I want to say Amber said it was like 2:00 in the afternoon before they ever went to the police. So that still doesn't square all that away by them not having a phone at the house. But them not having a phone at the house does mean boatloads when it comes to the phone call from the church, if that indeed happened. And I want to say I called AT&T, and anyway, I couldn't find anything. But yeah, it had to do with because you can eliminate. Well, she wasn't calling the house, she wasn't calling home from the church. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode 2 revisited, and I'll see you on the flip side for episode 3. Thanks.